The screenshot on the front, it's from 8 years ago when Daniel Kitlitz was killed. He wasn't just killed, he was murdered, he was fenced, and then law enforcement left his body there for between 4 and 6 hours, knowing that they had been called. They were told that he was back there behind the pedestrian shop where Kinga Nichols, one of my witnesses, worked. And Anna, she's on my YouTube channel, recorded, because she's a witness too. Kinga Nichols is recorded on my channel. Tony DeStassi was the manager of the pedestrian shop at the time. He's a witness as well, and he's recorded on my channel. None of them cared enough to come forward because all three of them lived in houses at the time. All three of them, to this day, are afraid of the police, especially in Boulder, and have spoke up many times about the corruption. They also wanted to give me advice rather than tell the things that they were a witness to, so I recorded them and I posted them up here on my YouTube channel. Tony DeStassi tried to have it taken down. Anna tried to have it taken down. Kinga Nichols tried to have it taken down. Their own voices showing that I told the truth. I told the truth. It's still up. Those recordings are still up. You can still hear Tony DeStassi talking about Daniel Kitlitz's death. Something that Officer Steinman and many other officers in Boulder like to use as a point of contention to try starting a fight with his friends after he's passed away. Same thing that they wanted to do to Ashley after he was shot at the hospital. Officer Steinman, he'd come up to us and he'd say that he was the one that shot our friend Ash over and over again, telling us he's the one that killed him. He's the one that killed him. He's the one that shot Ash. He's the reason Ash is dead. It reminds me of my older brother growing up. We didn't get to see each other very often, but when we did, goddamn, he was fucking mean. You just a fucking mean kid. You just really fucking mean. He just couldn't help himself but to be fucking mean. He was always real good about making friends. He was also a fucking dickhead. And we did have some mutual friends growing up, sort of. You know, when you're the little brother and your older brother's like, man, you're uncool. I don't want to hang out with you. Yeah, I got this friend Steven and this friend Shane, and me and him are friends, and me and him are friends, and Shane and Steven are both friends with each other, too. My brother Eric tells about the time I beat the shit out of Steven and Shane at the same time. I don't remember it that way. Here's how I remember it. Eric and his friends were fucking making fun of me, bullying me, picking on me again. And the guy who managed the property, his son was hanging out with us that day, and I fucking didn't like his son. You know, I really tried hard to like him. But my older brother thought it was the funniest goddamn thing and to go, because I have Tourette's syndrome. What's the reason for this? Well, it's because as soon as he did it, it would trigger me and I would start doing it and I couldn't stop. And he just thought it was the funniest fucking goddamn thing. He really, really liked to do that in front of people. And then they're all laughing at me and making fun of me. Am I embarrassed? No. Not by a fucking long shot. I am fucking ashamed of my older brother for being such a fucking piece of shit. If he doesn't get what he wants, that's what he does. Now, there's a cure for it, they say. They say, hey, Sean, you know, if you take ORAP, O-R-A-P, ORAP, also called Pimozide, it will help you with that, Sean. You won't have Tourette syndrome anymore. And I took it. Well, it didn't stop having Tourette syndrome, not by a long shot. It made it worse. Not only that, I got to get my liver tested. I got to get blood tests all the fucking time to make sure that it doesn't kill me. Then they put me on lithium because the neighborhood kids are fucking pounding on me. And my older brother, he's trying to teach me stuff that he's learned in ninjutsu, but he's not trying to teach me the right way. I walked through the door in my house. My dad's not going to get off of work. He was working as a cable man right after he got out of prison. He got to take college courses in prison. He actually committed the crimes. I was in prison. I didn't get to take college courses. I also wasn't fucking convicted of a goddamn thing. Matter of fact, after 7 months locked up, yes, I was in fucking prison on charges that they had to drop because they were fucking bullshit. All they had to do, see, here's what happens. You try to turn in the cops in western Nebraska. They arrest you on bullshit charges. It goes on the fucking radio and gets printed in the newspaper. And they just assume you're fucking guilty, and that's as simple as it is. Your guilt, your fate, is sealed before you ever get to the courtroom. The town has already decided on your guilt. And it really now only comes down to how much do people like you. Do they like you enough to lie for you? Because, well, here's the thing. The cops are going to lie. They'll lie to win. You get assaulted by a police officer because he's fucking your wife. What does he do? He comes over and fucking assaults you. Claims he was called over for a domestic assault. Oh, but there's no phone call record of it, is there? So now he's got to change his story, and the judge's going to let him do it. Oh, well, I was just happened to be driving by the house. You know, I knew that there were some problems there before, and she told me about it. And so I went by there, and I heard me some screaming, and I had justified cause because of this, and this. Meanwhile, the wife ain't trying to turn in her husband. She's saying that what the sheriff's saying is bullshit, but the sheriff already done fucking run it around town that she's fucking crazy. Why is that? Because he's been having sex with her. Jim Haith tried to do that with Polly Olson. When he got busted embezzling funds, he tried claiming that Polly Olson was crazy. That she was just making it up. Where did Jim Haith end up? In prison for embezzling that money. What happened to Polly Olson? After the situation with doing it again to help Scott DaCosta, the sheriff, to get away with his crimes, she decided she was going to steal $18,000 more like she had done with Jim Haith many years earlier. She's well liked, though. Because she's well liked, people did listen to her. Just like when I needed to get my ID, I did rely on her because people liked her, because she worked at the courthouse, and because she would lie for me. They expected me to know somebody for 10 years or more to sign for that, and I only knew her for like 6 or 7 years by the time she signed that. But I went to school with her fucking kids. I knew her kids. I drew pictures of her kids for her. That's right, I used to be an artist. I also drew pictures of Fornander's daughter. The people who liked me in chapel liked me because I could draw them pictures of their loved ones, their children, the things that they're proud of, the people that they're proud of, and more importantly, dead people. Thank goodness, Polly Olson's daughter that I drew a picture of was not killed. But little Jason Jeffson of Chapel, Nebraska, her ex-husband, did try to murder her. He was trying to shoot at her while she was months and months pregnant because he was strung out on fucking meth. After Natalie's death and after years of him being one of my predators, he used Natalie's death to try to pretend I was some sort of a horrible person. Figured he could justify his sins in trying to kill Polly Olson's daughter, Ashley. Was Ashley Olson, then Ashley Jepson, now it's Ashley Bauer. She married one of my bullies from high school. One of my biggest bullies from high school. Dylan Bauer, one of the few bullies to ever apologize to me. And one of the few people to actually try to help me in situations that none of my long-term friends, none of these people I knew for all these years would ever try to help me out of. I knew because I was trying. Please help me find my phone. It's full of evidence. Dylan Bauer, with little Jason Jeffson's kids in his vehicle, was going to stop and help me. He had an appointment to go to, and if I was still there when he got back, he was going to stop and search with me. Now, what does this have to do with the police antagonizing? What is my older brother antagonizing me and that fight beating up two of his friends? I don't remember me beating up Stephen and Shane. I was told later by my dad and by the guy who ran the property and by my older brother that I beat the living fuck out of those two assholes. Now, why don't I remember it? Because it didn't happen. The guy who ran the property, they also admitted that I cold-cocked his son, and I did. What he did is shove me. He didn't punch me in the face. My older brother was making fun of me, and I'm quick-witted. Everybody knows it. Very quick-witted. A lot quicker-witted than he is. But he's very astute himself. And he was doing his 2 + 2 is 5 routine. He wanted to show Shane and Steven and this other kid that I would say that 2 + 2 is 5, and I wasn't going to do it. I knew that if I didn't say it was 5, that he was going to beat me up. I knew that if I said it was 4, he was going to beat me up immediately. If I didn't say 2 + 2 is 4 immediately, if I just let him continue, he'd just keep on doing it, keep on doing it. And if that didn't work, he'd start in on the and then they'd all stand around and make fun of me for going And my brother would tell me that I don't get to go to any of the places that he's going to go. I couldn't go to Wonderworld Books and Gifts in Des Moines, Washington, because that was his place. That was for him and his friend Matt and his friend Nick. That's right, I even remember their names after all these years. But Shane and Steven, the fight with them, it wasn't a fucking fight. I didn't beat them up, the two of them, single-handedly. What happened is that fucking kid, he was making fun of me. I was telling Eric to stop and telling them to mind their business. A lot of people do that with me. They want to bully me 5-on-1 and tell other people to mind their business. And when I speak up, they tell me to mind my business. You're the ones fucking bullying me. I bully you back. You don't like it, do you? The guy who ran the property, his son shoved me. He pushed me one-handed, but he fucking shoved me hard. And as I was coming forward, that's the first thing you do. That's the first thing you're taught. You got to gain your balance. So when somebody pushes you backwards, you step your foot down and you try to plant. His hand was still on my chest, which meant that he was right in arm's reach, and I punched him right in the nose and gave him a bloody nose, and yes, I felt terrible. When you guys know that somebody is autistic, you know that you just talk over him and treat him like he's a retard. You've assumed that he's a retard, and you show it by the way that you speak to him. Even when we think that you're listening, you aren't. You've got your own shit in your head, and that's what's mulling through your head instead of hearing what's coming out of our mouths. I needed help getting my voice heard because anybody can victimize me, call me mentally ill. I don't have the money to defend myself in court. I don't have the money to hire a real lawyer, so I never get to show evidence. I don't have a friend or family member that'll go in with me when I'm victimized, when I am abused, when I come to them for help. So I have to go in alone where I'm blown off and given the mentally ill treatment. Oh, you're being bullied? We don't care. Oh, you're being bullied to the point that you want your life to end? Free money. Let's lock you up for being suicidal. You've got suicidal litigations. Let's take you to the hospital and get some money out of this. Taxpayers will pay for it. It's government money. No, it's taxpayer money. The police know that they can antagonize you as a homeless person, and it's going to be nearly impossible to get the body cameras. And why is that? Because your public pretenders are going to tell you it's going to take an act of God to get them. An act of God, truly. In a court of law, I need to rely upon an act of God. No. There is a legal fucking procedure. There is a legal procedure to follow. An act of God is literally not a legal procedure. If your lawyer is telling you you need an act of God, your lawyer is lying to you through their teeth. If you're a rich person, are they going to tell you that it's going to take an act of God? No, not unless they want you to believe they're a miracle worker and you've actually done something terrible and your fate is sealed. And all of those have to be true at the same time. Then your lawyer might go, yeah, you're going to need an act of God. You should, well, your fingerprints are all over the murder weapon. It's your ex-wife who you literally threatened to kill at the top of your lungs while she was on the phone screaming, he's stabbing me to death. There is multiple video cameras that she set up throughout the house that are all pointed at you and live feed to the internet, to her YouTube channels, and she had multiples. Millions of people across the world have seen you in high definition, stabbing her to death with a kitchen knife, by the way. That is the most common knife to be stabbed to death with, a kitchen knife. It's also the best knife for throwing. Don't argue with me, because if you do, you're wrong. How do you like that? My older brother's saying 2 + 2 is 5, and if I don't believe him, he's going to hurt me. That's the same thing with the police officers. When they know that what they're telling you about the law is an outright goddamn lie, but you're alone. Even if it's recorded on the body camera evidence, they know that they're going to fucking hurt you a lot. That your public pretender isn't going to give a fuck. That they're going to hurt you some more at the fucking jail. That there's going to be no audio recording. It's just assumed that they're telling the truth because they have a badge, and you're lying because you're called mentally ill. This is why you record it. This is why you go to a friend or family member immediately and try to turn it into the proper legal route. Not an act of God. We are not going to take all of my evidence to the Almighty. He's not going to do anything with it. You were a witness to me being assaulted. That makes you a fucking witness. Don't try telling me, well, I can't do nothing to help. I'm not a lawyer. Fuck you. When I say you're a witness and I start to explain to you why your testimony is important, you want to talk over me, talk down to me, talk to me like I'm retarded. You want to become a pocketbook lawyer. All of a sudden, everything that you told me, you want to go, oh, well, hearsay is not admissible. It's only hearsay when it's just me. When I say Tony DeStassi was there for it, and they say Sean is schizophrenic and delusional, and we don't know who this Tony DeStassi guy is. Well, let me tell you who Tony DeStassi is. He is a former manager at the pedestrian shop on Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado. My home for years. He was the boss of Anna Alford, who was there the day that Danny was found dead behind their store. Both he and Anna are witnesses. Both of them are recorded on my channel. The newspaper articles and official statements by Boulder police show the discrepancy between what they had to say and what really happened. What the witnesses are recorded on this very YouTube channel saying. These police officers say anything that they want to antagonize you. And you're not allowed to react. But they want you to react, and they're going to egg you on until you react. They will poke you with their finger and put their arm on you and put their hands on you. If you move even just a little bit, they will slam you on the ground, beat the fuck out of you. If there's a bunch of people around with cameras, well, they decide they're not going to beat the fuck out of you. What they're going to do instead is they're going to claim that you tried to assault them. They're going to place you in cuffs. They're going to turn your wrist sideways in those handcuffs. It is excruciatingly painful. And they're going to push on that. They're going to feel your body for pressure points that you don't have a resistance to. And they're going to dig their fucking thumbs into that shit. If you are highly resistant to that like me, they will dig around until they find a fucking injury, a long-term injury. When I was assaulted by Officer Burke in Longmont, he was supposedly an officer in Natalie's case who was supposed to investigate the stalking. He was supposed to call me, and he didn't. I was the one being stalked. Nobody wanted to hear it. They wanted to tell me to let it go. They didn't want to hear how many times I had been assaulted, how many times I had been threatened, how many times they had threatened to kill friends who were not even my friends anymore in some of these cases. I was sad that me and Miss Jerry weren't friends anymore in that whole year between when I left Virginia and when Natalie got killed. For that whole year, I was not friends with Miss Jerry or her family anymore because of a racist post against Colin Kaepernick. Rather than trying to understand how hurtful that was, they ganged up on me in the worst kind of way and tried to manipulate things into something that it wasn't. Since Natalie's death, There have been hundreds of women who have joined in the stalking against me. And when I tell them to go away, they start pushing claiming to their friends and family that I'm a pedo, claiming I'm a pedophile, claiming I'm friends with a bunch of pedophiles. You guys ain't gonna listen, though. You call me mentally ill, and the homeless thing on top of it. I mean, look at the news. The news is telling you who to hate, and they're telling you to hate the homeless, and you're fucking eating it up. BLM is eating it up. MMIW is eating it up. The KKK is eating it up. Your local senators are eating it up. The fucking president is eating it up. They love it. They fucking love it. They can do whatever they want. You're going to take it out on the smallest population with the least likelihood of having a fucking firearm to blow your goddamn head off. We got all these Second Amendmenters complaining that they're trying to take their guns. No, they're not taking your guns. They're going specifically after people who don't have guns. People who can't defend themselves. How likely is it that somebody's going to sell a gun to somebody who's schizophrenic? Not very likely. How likely is it that Scott Scudder has access to firearms 24 hours a day? That's pretty fucking good. Yes, Scott Scudder has access to firearms 24 hours a day. Anytime that he wants a gun, even with being diagnosed with schizophrenia, he always has access to a firearm. Well, you guys pretend I'm some sort of a terrible monster. I know of at least 6 people in town who will literally hand me a firearm anytime I ask them. Some of them have literally shown me the firearms. Hey man, you need protection. Fucking let me know. Jesus, fuck, no, I don't need that kind of protection. If somebody decides they're going to shoot me, I don't have it in me to shoot back. I'm just going to die. That's what's going to happen, whether I have a gun or not. But if I have a gun because I was dumb enough to take yours, now they have an excuse. I'm not going to fucking give them that excuse. I get to hear how horrible it is that police killed a black kid who had a BB gun that looked literally like a real gun. It had one tiny part that was orange, but there are 1,000,001 different angles when somebody's holding something like that where you're not going to see the orange tip. Or where it's a moment's notice thing because it's being rizzed in your direction, and that orange tip is mistaken for a fucking muzzle flash because it's quick. And I get told that because of that there's a big difference between all black people and all white people. You know, if that little black kid had been blasted for carrying around a bright green and neon fucking orange goddamn Nerf gun, then I'd be like, yeah, straight up, that's fucked up. But I've seen people with BB guns that have those orange things on the front. I go out to the sand pits, and they fucking, first thing they do is draw a bead on me with it, and it's fucking quick. I don't have a gun at that point. Me and Chris Stegeman went out there one time to blow off some, well, steam. I had an SKS, he had an AK-47. We didn't have them loaded. They were in the gun case. The gun case was locked. It was put away. When we got out there was somebody out there shooting with a BB gun. We didn't know it. We thought it was an AR-15. When he pointed at our direction, Chris Stegeman's driving. I'm in the passenger seat. We both stuck our heads down under the dash because it was a quick reaction. If we'd have had our guns loaded and right next to us, would we have fucking pulled them out and pointed them at somebody? No. We both would have ducked exactly as we had. When someone is practicing improper gun safety and you know about proper gun safety, somebody's pointing a gun at you, they're far enough away from you that you can't redirect it, you're gonna duck. Don't point that at me, it's fucking loaded. You got something that's 4.5 foot long, and you've got 1 inch of it that's bright orange. That's it. 1 inch at the very end of it. Now, what's this antagonistic stuff about from cops? Why do they do it? Because they know they'll get away with it. They don't want to do their fucking jobs. A lot of times they've already assumed your fucking guilt. When I was in Virginia, that wasn't a fucking stalking thing. It was quite the opposite. I was pressured to go there because Natalie was going to fucking kill herself if I didn't. We'd already planned the trip. Many people were involved in helping me to get the money to go. They knew exactly what was going on. After Natalie's death, these people want to get antagonistic at me because they don't want to tell the truth. Or they want to play sympathy. Laura Nelson saying, Sean, I can't tell the truth. I'm afraid for my son. Fuck you. I'm afraid for your son too, because you're not coming forward. I'm afraid for my sister because you're not coming forward. I'm afraid for my niece because you're not coming forward. I'm afraid for Sarah Bacon and her kids because you're not coming forward. I'm afraid for Carl Rogers and her kids because you're not coming forward. Each and every one of those people wanted to use that as an excuse to dip out. Fine, you've got your excuse to dip out, but when it comes to child abuse and people literally threatening to kill your fucking kids, no, I will not keep quiet about that, especially after them doing that to my family, which is what started this to begin with. Do not fuck with my friends and family. I don't care if they fucking hate me, you don't fuck with them. You don't threaten to kill them. You do not get to get away with that. When I am treated like I'm schizophrenic because you told me that police officers in specific threatened to kill you and your family. That was Carl Rogers, by the way, aka Caramia. If any of you paid attention at the very beginning of this shit, you get to see what a fucked up mess that was. Oh, and by the way, she destroyed evidence. Useful help. Thank you very much for recording something with a professional that showed that they lied and misled the situation and then destroying the evidence. Thank you very much for that, Carl Rogers. If I'd have known how to do that, I'd have done it myself. I didn't learn how to do that or get the materials to do so until much later. Part of the reason that I'm able to record live on my phone instead of having to do it the old-fashioned way, to record the whole thing and then try to download it ever so fucking slowly on public internet in Starbucks. 6.5 hours later, you've got a video. Recording it live guarantees a lot of things. I wasn't able to record the situation in Rawlins, Wyoming with those officers live. I literally had to plead guilty to crimes I didn't commit in order to get that computer full of evidence back. Meanwhile, they also tried to guarantee that my vehicle was taken from me and that the evidence in there that they knew contained evidence of abuse against children. And that recording shows I told the truth, but I literally had to plead guilty to crimes I didn't commit to get that evidence. But I didn't have any help turning it in. All I could do is post it on YouTube. When I say, hey, you know what? You said you were going to come forward. You said you were going to tell the truth. And you never did, Brenda Dickinson. You never showed up in court. You never spoke up. You never spoke up about the expenses that you want to throw in my face. You never spoke up about the situation with me earning money. You never spoke up, of course, about your husband bullying me out of that money that I had earned. You didn't speak up about helping me to plan the trip, or me turning around to rescue Jamie Curtis, and her son. No, not the famous actress, just the same name. What did Brenda Dickinson do to antagonize me and try to make me feel completely like shit? She typed at me that she can't help me 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. Lady, you haven't fucking helped me a goddamn bit. Brenda Dickinson helped me to get into housing before Natalie was killed. Brenda Dickinson went and spoke to her friend. Her friend got a special favor from Cindy Taylor. That's how I ended up in housing. After years of trying it by myself and being denied, at first because I was a single white male under the age of 25 with no dependents. Years and years of that. Then when I was over 25, fuck, you're a dude. These services are for women who have children. Sure, you're disabled, but nobody's helping you to get disability. Disability will send you the paperwork saying that you've been denied before they send you the paperwork or the envelope or the message that is supposed to get to you to tell you that you have an appointment you have to make it to. And if you don't make it to that appointment, they're going to deny you. I've gotten those letters literally months after I was supposed to have the appointment. And Brenda Dickinson, and of course Jeff Witcher, the father of child molester, molested his own children. Andrew Witcher, one of the perverts I tried to turn in. One of the people that there was evidence of. Still is evidence of, by the way. I made sure I got double copies of that in triplicate. Abso-fucking-lutely. When the police assault you and terrorize you, they call it investigating. Their terror campaign against you, or they're literally torturing you. They don't call it torture. They just call it a different name. They call it pain compliance. But the purpose of it is exactly the same as their purpose in torture. To gain a response. There have been many officers who quit being officers and made YouTube videos about the experience, about how they were taught how to hurt somebody so that they would move. And they were taught that when they did that, they were supposed to yell, "Stop resisting." And if they do that, magically the public will assume. They don't have to see anything. They're going to assume. They heard it, so they'll just transpose what they assume happened as it must be truth. Stop resisting. Or they'll have an officer on one side of you and an officer on another. You're already in cuffs. You're not resisting in the least bit at all. And one of them will pull you, and you're a little off balance because of it. And what'll the other one do? Slam you down onto the fucking ground face first. And says, "Stop resisting," or "He's trying to get away." You're alone. You ask them for their name and for their card, and they refuse to give you either. You ask their coworkers for their name and for their card as well, and they refuse. It's being recorded. The whole situation is being recorded on their body cameras. You go to your public pretenders and you say, "Hey, the body cameras show that their official testimony is an outright goddamn lie." "Oh, well, Sean, we can't get the body cameras." Why not? Get the body cameras. Why are the body cameras not requisitioned? Oh, well, I haven't requisitioned them yet. And then she says she doesn't have time and she doesn't have time. And after 3 months of this, and you were continually going back, you only make $800. Well, I only made 600 and something at the time per month disability. And literally all of it was going to traveling to places where I was abused and assaulted by police officers and by the general public. And I have to go there for a court date. And my public pretenders repeatedly don't show up. Or they show up and they want a continuance. But then, after 3 months, they tell you, oh, it's been longer than 30 days. We can't get the body cameras. Or it's been longer than 90 days. We can't get the body camera evidence. The words are important. The fact that I was intentionally manipulated and lied to by those police officers, and that they intentionally lied to the courts, and that my public pretenders were literally telling me it would take an act of God to get those body cameras. When I wouldn't let it go, they eventually dropped the charges. And they knew that as a homeless person, it would be near impossible to get any government agency, especially any law enforcement agency, or anyone who works in the courthouses, to listen to a goddamn thing I have to say if I have to go in alone. One of their running jokes after they'd assault me in the jails, I'd fill out the paperwork that if they allowed me to have it, if they didn't put me on suicide watch to deny me the right to access to their names, or to writing materials, or to even paper, somehow magically that makes it okay. They try to push you to suicide by repeatedly coming by your cell and antagonizing you and making fun of you. Telling the other inmates that you're a pervert and a murderer. That was a fun one, wasn't it? Or, of course, there's the one where the officer decided first thing in the morning, instead of allowing me my breakfast, he stuck his arm in there with the food and tossed it across my floor. Unlike the stuff on the outs where I was able to record the actual audio so you could hear the actual words. When I was locked up, they make it their word versus mine, and that's something that cannot be allowed when it is an at-risk adult. It cannot be allowed to be a person in power versus someone who is disabled, because the disabled person will lose 100% of the time due to public opinion. They tell you we're all rapists. They tell you we're all murderers. They tell you we're all child molesters. They tell you the homeless are destroying this country. The mentally ill are the ones who are murdering people. You misdiagnose every single person that you call mentally ill. Because mentally ill literally is not a diagnosis. Mentally ill is a title meant to dismiss and diminish the words of the victims, to deprive them of their constitutional and legal rights, to deprive them of life, liberty, and of course, what is their pursuit of happiness? They're pursuing life and liberty while incarcerated because they don't have enough money for bail, and these jailers and these cops know it. And they say, oh, you can get a lawyer when you get out. But then they don't let you out. They transfer you to another facility where you're being harmed in another jurisdiction. No less than 8 jurisdictions in Colorado were involved in abusing me in the Natalie case before Natalie was killed and before they found Joseph Lopez. No less than 3 jurisdictions in Virginia and 3 jurisdictions in Nebraska were involved in the situation with Natalie Bollinger before she was killed. Before she was killed. Because all of these places were involved in victimizing me for having a reaction to trauma. Not drama. Trauma. To me being called horrible names of things that did not happen. And I knew how quickly and how easily those things could get out of hand. I had seen it with hundreds of other people out on the streets. I had been there to literally be the only one to speak up for people who were not the predators. Christopher Weaver would be dead if I hadn't spoken up for the fact that he was sexually attacked and I was sexually attacked by his ex after she had a protection order against her. I didn't find out about the situation with Rick until after he got to chapel at Laura Nelson. She's another person who is heavily involved in the situation with me earning the money and going to Virginia. She knew a lot of fucking details. But her excuse for not coming forward was the fear for her autistic son in Chapel, Nebraska, and retaliation by the police. Sorry, no police in Chapel. You've got the Dual County Sheriff's Department, and that's it. If you need to turn in people at the Dual County Sheriff's Department who work for the Sheriff's Department, they're not going to fucking let you. When officers in Chesapeake, Virginia intentionally broke my vehicle further because they were lied to, they didn't care that it was a lie. They knew that they could hurt me and get away with it, and that's as simple as it was. When I called the police to try to turn in the fact that officers had destroyed portions of my vehicle in retaliation, even though they took me to the hospital, and their professional therapist at the hospital took my side and released me, understood that I went there to save a friend's life who was strung out on fucking heroin, and she threatened to kill herself if I wasn't there fast enough, and I wasn't there fast enough, and she attempted. And that professional therapist that they had me sit down and talk to, what was her name? What jurisdiction was that? And of course, the officers that they sent me to were literally the officers I was trying to turn in. I'm trying to turn in officers in Chesapeake, Virginia that committed crimes against me for something that turned out that they could prove in Virginia and did prove in Virginia was bullshit. It was bullshit. 100% fucking bullshit. They were not fucking stalked. I left because I was not comfortable being around people who are going to play fucking victim like that when they don't get what the fuck they want when they're fucking strung out on drugs. That's not my fucking fault. I know well enough to fucking leave in that situation, and that's what the fuck I did. But that wasn't good enough. They had to lie to Matty Boa, who was in Boulder, who was also a friend of mine. And Matty Boa went off the fucking deep end, spreading every sick, disgusting, perverted fucking lie that she could and claiming that I did all of this to Alicia and Natalie. You look at the conversations that Natalie and Alicia and I had while I was in Virginia. Tell me that is conversations you're going to have with the stalker. No, those are friends. Well, all right, so Alicia laid it on as thick as Natalie did that she loved me. But Natalie was the one who thought she was in love with me. And the evidence shows that, but you won't look at that. You tell me if I send it to you, you'll look at it. Look at Mandy Hughes, claimed that whole time she was going to take a look at it. She was going to speak up. She was going to go in with me to court so that I didn't have to do it alone. She was going to go in with me to turn in my predators so I didn't have to do it alone. She spoke about the situation with her daughter, Alyssa Rainwater. Alyssa Rainwater spoke of her situation as well. They both spoke about talking about Ted Bollinger to Officer Jones. Amanda Jonas, sorry, of Longmont, Colorado. Officer Amanda Jonas had committed crimes against me and tried to claim that I was schizophrenic because I was trying to turn in Waylon Lolatai. Even mainstream news picked up Waylon Lolatai's situation because he just couldn't stop assaulting people because he hates homeless people. He loves violence. He promotes violence by police officers towards anyone, including women. He's also a black man. So does this make it okay? He antagonizes victims. I was the victim in the Natalie Bollinger situation, not Natalie. I was the one stalked, not Natalie. I was the one who went to police for help and went to my friends for help. I asked my predators to put a stop to it. I told them what I was being harmed over. They knew that those things were not true. Why did they do those things? Natalie did not claim that I raped her. She did not claim that I molested her when she was underage. Neither did Alicia Bollinger. Maddie Boa claimed I did those things. Maddie Boa, a lesbian who had a crush on both of them. She wanted the set, by her own words. Do you think people are nice to you when rumors like that are spread? That is not something you get to just walk away from. That separated me from all of my loved ones. That separated me from being able to see Mobley, from being able to see Christine, from being able to, well, they're both dead, aren't they now? Of course they are. It prevented me from being able to see Stephen Green, who is also dead, and Tim Cosick, who's also dead. Prevented me from seeing Tommy Galloway, aka Onyx, and he's also dead now. Prevented me from seeing Tommy Allen, who is also dead now. Prevented me from seeing Morgan Burns, who is also dead now. Stephen McMillian, that one hurt a lot. I was in prison when he died. I was locked up when Christine Buhit was killed too. But because I predicted her death and the manner in which she was going to die and where she was going to die, they want to push this thing claiming that it's my fault, that I had done it somehow magically. No. You guys pretend that I am too stupid to read between the lines. I've had enough friends that got housing who were addicts, full-on addicts when they got housing, to know that they're going to fucking overdose in housing. And why. I also knew that Christine Buhit, she was homeless, and she was willing to fight for me. She was forcing her old her old Facebook on me, saying, use this one. You can speak out on this one. You can use this one because they keep attacking yours. I tried to explain to her, ma'am, they're trying to destroy evidence on mine. I need to be able to save the evidence. But she was insistent that I use hers. And so I did. And then people pretended that I was using that I had created it myself, specifically with the intent and purpose of harassing Natalie's family. No, they were harassing me. They were gaslighting me. Every interaction and every contact between myself and Natalie's family, I tried to get supervised. Because I am an at-risk adult, and I knew that they could make it their word versus mine. When I busted their friends doing bad shit, or Shannon Alvarado busted their web sleuth buddies doing immoral and illegal things, did my friends or family ever help me to turn those things in, or did they say, oh, well, I'm in the wrong state, I'm in the wrong place? I tell you that you can turn it in from anywhere. I invite you to the places and literally will tag your name in them so that you can see them with your own two eyes, and you will not do that. Instead, you want the abridged version. You don't stop to consider the abridged version is a bunch of goddamn lies that are just overly recycled and little bits and pieces that people pulled out to try to twist it into something it wasn't. Well, you've had access to all the evidence, or much more than they do anyway, because it was only people who hated me that were posting up that shit. The people who were claiming to be supportive were only words. Oh, that's wrong. You're saying that it's wrong in these Facebook groups. Are you helping me to turn it into the courts? Because that's where it needs to go. It needs to go to the police. When you say, well, why didn't you turn it into the cops? I have fucking tried repeatedly alone. When Laura Nelson wants to tell me about how she's afraid for her son, he's the most precious thing in the world to her, and she's afraid. She's afraid for him. She's afraid of what these people will do to her son. When she tells me not to turn in the evidence to Sean Holloway because she doesn't trust him. There's a reason she doesn't trust him. But she never spoke up about that. And I was forced to go to Sean Holloway repeatedly after that. He's the one that I had to try to turn in the first assault by Robert Franklin Warnick in. This is after I've tried to turn in Sean Holloway for his crimes. And I'm being forced to go to the Dual County Sheriff's Department for crimes committed against me in Dual County, while the Dual County Sheriff's Department has repeatedly committed crimes against me. You guys are pissed off that Waylon Lolatai was allowed to move on after his involvement in the Sammy Leon Lawrence situation, Zaid Atkinson situation, Michelle Rodriguez situation, and Kelly Clark situation. You don't stop to consider he did it to me first, and he'd already been let go once from Denver to do that as well. You also don't stop to consider that in a county where there's only 500 people in Chapel, Nebraska, 500 people, and 240 in Big Springs. Those are the only two towns in Dual County, Nebraska. Dual County Sheriff Scott DaCosta and his deputies committed a lot of felonies against me, and I was forced by Nebraska State Patrol to go to Scott DaCosta to turn in his deputies, because he's supposed to have special powers to discipline them for their actions. Well, he didn't discipline them. He allowed them all to move on to become officers elsewhere, and that prevented them from being hauled in and sworn up in court. Prevented them from testifying against their boss, Scott DaCosta. According to Nebraska State Patrolman Bill Burr, I did in fact go to him all the way back in 2018 about the situation with Scott DaCosta. According to him, he did turn in the evidence. According to him, it'll take an act of God for me to get it back. What is it with all of these lawmen, lawyers, not knowing the law, or outright lying about the law, or changing it to suit their fancy? And their buddies in the courthouse like Polly Olson and Joan Hansen. Me being forced to turn in a protection order against Scott DaCosta, literally to Scott DaCosta. Me having to go back and get those papers again. and get different instructions that obviously I was going to need help with if I was to do it. And nobody would help me. And I'm told, well, why doesn't Dallas Richmond help you? You're staying there. He knows how to do computer stuff. I know he knows how to do computer stuff. He was always doing computer stuff in high school, and people are telling me about his computer stuff. And he's like, I don't know how to do none of that. Man, I'm depressed. Dude, I'm too drunk for this. When he got a job finally, after me supporting his ass and his family supporting his ass for 7 months, in a house that I would have bought if it hadn't been for Natalie Bollinger being killed, and all of my money having to go to all these appointments. And of course, I've got public pretenders who are going to antagonize me by refusing to look at evidence, repeatedly talking over me, telling me that I need act of gods for this and acts of God for that. No, it doesn't require an act of God. You are going out of your way to intentionally mislead me as far as the law goes. And they did this over and over again and repeatedly didn't show up. And then said that it was too late to get it because of discovery, because they had repeatedly not shown up. And every time they didn't show up, it cost me money. And I would be threatened that if I didn't show up to the next court date, there would be a warrant out for my arrest. It got to the point where I'm getting $640 a month for disability, and I have to somehow magically come up with $1,400 a month so that I can drive around all of these appointments and still pay to have a vehicle insured. Meanwhile, it's unsafe for me to drive said vehicle. I was driving after Natalie died, and I finally was able to get it fixed. I was driving around the same vehicle that had broken down in fucking Virginia when I went to see Natalie. The very same vehicle that I had earned from Laura Nelson and David Nelson, that I had paid off. Natalie Bollinger, after 2 weeks, I told her I would only be gone for 2 weeks because she was suicidal from the way that people in Colorado were treating her. She was suicidal over the abuse from Tim Beeson, and the abuse from her dad, and the abuse from her uncle, and them telling her that they've got people out to kill them. Well, they're child molesters. Of course there's people out to fucking kill them. They're meth addicts who sold their own daughters into sexual slavery. Of course there are people out to fucking kill them. But she said she didn't know if it was true or not. Natalie Bollinger didn't know if that was true or not. This is something that is in our text messages. You can still take a look at that fucking evidence. It's actual evidence. Actual conversations between Natalie and I. When somebody in real life, in person, sits down and reads the thing with Natalie, they realize how important it really is. That they were outright lies, and still are outright lies, that I am still harmed over to this day. Claiming that I stalked her to Virginia, and then claiming, or trying to insinuate, by not having to put down the times or dates of anything, she's getting to insinuate that these things have happened in Colorado in the last year before she died. No, none of that shit happened in Colorado that actually happened. Me staying behind her work literally did not ever happen. I stayed behind where her sister worked because her sister asked me to. You can see in the messages between her sister and I at the time. But people are allowed to antagonize me. These people, like my dad, when I was trying to get him to finally learn something about autism, what did he do instead? He was looking for just the parts that he could use and twist out of context to try to pretend that everything that he had ever done to me in my life was magically my fault because of the freeze loop. All he wanted me to do was learn about Forex.com and play a shitty demo of a fucking truck driving game. It took longer than 2 weeks for me to earn that vehicle. I had to get a job in Julesburg, Colorado while staying in Chapel, Nebraska, working at the Subway for Andrew Witcher's ex-girlfriend. Her name was Brianna Cook, K-O-C-H. That's how I was able to earn that vehicle. And when Natalie and Maddie and Alicia were all supposed to meet me, because Natalie wasn't going to get on the plane unless I promised to go down and see her in person before she got on the plane. Well, I went down there and all of their phones were off. Brenda Dickinson helped me to make that trip as well. I was having heart issues, so I literally couldn't even drive myself. Brenda Dickinson asked her niece and her niece's boyfriend to drive me, and they drove me there and they drove me back, and I paid them for that. Brenda Dickinson could come forward about that. Her niece could come forward about that. The messages showed that they were apologetic and that their phones were off. That'd be Natalie, Maddie, and Alicia, because I didn't get to see them. Natalie said that if she went to Virginia, she was going to need me to come visit her. And me and Maddie Boa both planned the trip, and we planned it with Natalie, and we planned it with Alicia, and they knew I was coming. They encouraged it. And ultimately, Natalie threatened to kill herself because I wasn't already there. I wasn't already on the road. She needed me there that bad because her family was driving her to commit suicide. And then she tried. That problem that I had at Ken and Lee is before Natalie was killed, but after Virginia. Same exact problem that I had in Virginia. Same exact problem that David and Laura Nelson both knew was wrong with the car. When I say that that car had that issue and that it broke down, it's because it broke down. Not because I'm trying to blame them and make it all their fault that Natalie and Alicia took shit wrong. But also the fact is, if they'd have spoken up about that, it did show that people just took shit wrong. They went out of their way to take shit wrong, intentionally, because they didn't want to get in trouble for mistakes that they made. Everywhere that I went in Virginia, other than taking care of my own basic needs and helping out a couple of people that were fucked over because of a hurricane, it was all the stuff that Natalie and Alicia told me to do or asked me to do. I did everything. There was a point where I had to draw the line. When they were trying to hunt for apartments for me in Virginia so that I could live in Virginia closer to them, that's where I drew the line. No. Boulder, Colorado is my home. And Maddie Boa was my friend too, and she needs help. She's strung out on them drugs and she can't quit. When I needed a friend, I had two people who were a part of my life who actually cared to listen and help me how I needed. Maddie Boa couldn't help me with what I needed because she didn't have a vehicle. But Natalie did. Natalie gave me a ride out to the storage so that I could take off my backpack because my back was too fucked to carry it. People had stolen all of my stuff. They'd stolen my computer. They'd stolen my phone. They'd stolen so much from me. Because after I hurt my back, I couldn't defend myself, couldn't protect myself. I couldn't walk more than a block. I was literally stuck for an entire year before Natalie was killed. Sorry, an entire year before Natalie and Maddie came into my life. As adults, who I could actually allow to have a conversation with me without people being able to pretend that I'm some sort of a pedophile. People who, if they came to me for help now, I actually could help them because they were adults. But for a whole year, I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't do any of that. And I was stuck with that backpack on my back and those thieves. And my brother telling me, oh, well, Sean, rule on the streets. You put your stuff in that recycling bin and somebody else came and grabbed it out of there. That's a dumpster score. No, the guy who stole it knew that I was using it as a storage facility. He knew that I was staying right behind it. He knew that the cops harassed me literally every single night, and that this is the first night that I'd gotten to set up my box home. He knew that I lived in that box home when I set it up, and it looked just like a pile of recycling boxes. That's all it looked like. He knew that when I put something through the little tab there to close it off, that it meant that my stuff was in there and not to mess with it. So he stole my stuff out of there, my computer, everything. And I had a meltdown because my brother didn't care. And there was another guy who was there. He knew who took my bag. He saw him do it. And this guy was supposed to be a friend of mine, and he was going to go find that guy, and he was going to be back in 5 minutes. 2 days later, somebody comes to me and says all my stuff is in the bottom of the police annex parking garage. Well, not everything. Anything that was worth money was stolen. My brother didn't care. That wasn't even the first time that happened. There was another time I found all of my artwork, years worth of artwork, my art portfolio, and it was beautiful. And my art books too. Boris Vallejo, Cirilo Cabral. My brother was watching it because he wanted me to go down and get him some Cheese Whiz. That's all he wanted, some Cheese Whiz and crackers. I brought back the Cheese Whiz and crackers, and all my stuff was gone. And I searched for hours until I finally found it. Well, behind the pedestrian shop, same place Danny was killed, except it was strewn through the whole alley. The officer who was supposed to investigate Danny's death, who helped all of the emergency responders to literally get in zero trouble for his death. Did they ask me if I knew anything about that phone call? No, not while it was going on. They waited until after all my time in the interview room, and they turned off the recording, and as I was walking out, they asked me if I knew anything about the phone call at 4:30 in the morning. Jesus fucking Christ, if I knew anything about a phone call at 4:30 in the morning, I'd have been with Danny trying to fucking resuscitate him. I'd have dialed 911 and given my goddamn name. Now, it's obvious that the lady who was going to call me today is not going to call me. It's pretty fucking obvious. She's done this before. This is her MO. This is all of your MO. You're gonna, but you don't, and you don't. You say, I promise, and then you don't. You swear up and down that you understand, and then you literally do things that show that you don't understand because you weren't listening. Meanwhile, I have to pop up the recordings of the fact that that is actually what went down. Sure, you were nice about it. Sure, you made promises. You didn't keep your promises. When you know that that pushes somebody to suicide, and literally that's all you'll do. You'll say, oh, well, I won't do that again. Next time you have a panic attack, text me. If I'm not able to call you, I'll get a hold of you and let you know that I'm not able to. I'll let you know when I am. I will message you. And then you literally don't message them. You literally say that you will text them back immediately as soon as you can. And then you literally ignore everything that they say for 2 weeks. Don't even look at it. You claim that if I send you the evidence, that you will look at it. You say, I'll look at it while I'm working. I'll listen to it while I'm working. And then I send it to you, and you literally don't. And then you say, I did what I said I would because I made a fake account with your name on it, Sean. No. No. Dozens of people did that after Natalie was killed and pretended that I made dozens of accounts to harass Natalie. Nobody bothered to look at the fact that they were made after Natalie was killed, and that in most of those cases, they didn't even get the right middle name. Actually, the majority of them, they didn't use a middle name. But these people were reaching out to my friends and making false claims on fake accounts, and my friends didn't bother to find out if it was really me. A lot of them didn't know anything was happening with Natalie because they were used to just fucking ignoring me. Only thinking about themselves, looking out for number one, as they call it. Well, looking out for number one for every single one of them people involves manipulating people so that they can make their ends meet. Should they have to do that? You guys want to argue the morality of it, right? Is it okay for them to do that? Isn't that wrong for them to do it? Well, shouldn't it be okay under this circumstance or that circumstance? Well, what if they're black? Should it be okay then? What if it's a woman? Should it be okay then? A lot of the things that you guys do that are incredibly antagonistic, you claim that it's not antagonistic, but if I do it to you, then you claim I'm antagonizing you. How is it only antagonistic one way? How is it okay for Natalie Bollinger and her friends to literally stalk me, to literally threaten to kill me and my family, literally to do those things? And then you will help them to get away with it because they pretend that I did, with zero fucking evidence. Oh, and how do they get away with that? That's right, police don't follow the law, don't follow the protocol. And so they didn't follow the law, didn't follow the protocol, assumed that I was the bad guy, didn't bother with any of my legal rights, didn't bother with investigating, didn't even bother to tell me that I had a fucking court date. But I had to do it alone. Now, Chelsea Worsing was one of the people that I asked to go with me for that. Then I would have had a witness. But she let me know at the last minute that she had to work. Then, of course, there was Miss Peaches, but she couldn't go with me because she had to give me a ride there on her way to work. Kayla Trujillo was involved in so much of the situation, but she allowed me to get treated like I was some sort of a predator. She allowed me to get treated like I had made it up. And she pretended like she was going to go in with me to turn it into the police, but she literally did not lift a finger to actually do that. Matter of fact, she went out of her way to do what most people do, which is make sure that it's very last minute and they're not even going to answer the fucking phone. This place is open until 5. All right, well, it's 4:59. Let's finally make the call. Obviously, they didn't fucking answer. And then you don't try for another ever, do you? You literally don't make another attempt at it. Kayla Trujillo, the day that we were going to go in, I didn't have the money to see her on any day that she wanted me to go see her and just drop everything, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I was fucking trying. I had to set it up so that when I went to go see my public pretender, or because my public pretender wouldn't see me on the same day as an investigator and wouldn't see me the same day as court, so I had to make a $100 trip to go to court. And then another day that very same week, I'd have to spend another $100 so that I could travel and go see my public pretender, who didn't show up most of the time. No call, no shows, might I add. And there are witnesses to that, might I add. Repeated witnesses to that. Witnesses like Steve Tombleson, who is actually in good standing. But as far as helping turn it in, well, he said that he would, but we have to actually set about the legal process of doing so. Just like with all these other people, there is a legal process that needs to be followed, and I'm literally showing you everything that explains to you the legal process, so that you know the legal process, and you are literally going out of your way to play pocketbook lawyer after reading absolutely nothing, after looking at absolutely no evidence. And then there's the misleading situations. where you're trying to turn in predators that are harming you in real life. You're trying to turn in people who have broken the law, and you're told to go to the police about it. And they're trying to insinuate and reword everything that you say to mean something else. And they're going to bully you, and they're going to harass you, and they're going to do harmful things to you. And when your predator is allowed to stand there and stare at you and intimidate you and threaten you, while you're trying to turn them in to another one of their officers, and they keep trying to get you to talk to their buddy who just fucking threatened you, that is antagonistic as fuck, and it is scary as hell to the person who's on the receiving end of it. When I was being stalked and having my life threatened by Molly here, the police spoke with Molly. She was trying to pretend that I was going to harm Tom. Tried to insinuate to Tom that I was going to follow her back to her camp and steal all of her stuff and fucking rape her to death and tie her up and shit. Holy fuck, why is it that we have so many women who think that that is okay? You are a fucking psycho. And you just pretend that somebody might be a rapist or might be a pedophile, and magically it's okay to harm them? When I accuse somebody of being a pedophile, I back my shit up. I don't just go running around calling every Tom, Dick, and Harry that disagrees with me a pedophile. I don't go stalking somebody, and when I get busted stalking, pretend like they're a pedophile. When I say Robert Franklin Warnick is a registered sex offender in the state of Nebraska on the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry, what I mean to tell you is that if you go to the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry and you type in the name Robert Warnick, it will give you his name, it will give you his address, his actual street address. It will tell you what he was charged with, when he was charged with it, where he was charged with it, because this is your right to know. The fact that he repeatedly was allowed to threaten, harass, and intimidate me for sharing public knowledge of a predator who was literally harming me, literally threatening to kill me, and literally physically assaulted me on more than one occasion, and nobody helps to turn that in, do they? Not one person has tried to actually help me to turn in Robert Franklin Warnick, have they? No, they haven't. Meanwhile, I had to try to turn in Robert Franklin Warnick to an officer who I was warned not to trust by Laura Nelson. An officer who had repeatedly assisted his fellow officers in getting away with crimes they committed against me. And what did he do? Again, he assisted his fellow officers, including Scott DaCosta and the receptionist for Dual County Sheriff's Department, Leslie Snell, in committing felonies against me. But sure, they smile to the rest of you, and you assume because they have a badge and I'm called mentally ill, I must be wrong. Just like the way that you talk down to me when you say you're going to help me shows that you think I'm fucking retarded. You're going to tell me about how intelligent I am and give me false praise. Oh, you Jews, you're so smart. You guys are all millionaires. You guys are so good with numbers. The same stuff you tell me about autism. Oh, you guys are so good with numbers. You guys are so smart. If I'm trying to tell you what's going on and how other people are treating me, how they are harming me and why, and every time I start to explain it to you, you're going to stop and tell me that I'm one of the 144,000 that's going to heaven because autistic people are all going to heaven. There's 144,000 autistic people who have existed in the world, and they're all going to heaven. 144,000 people are going to heaven, and according to the Bible, they're autistic people, and it says so in the Bible, and you're going to keep on pounding this shit at me. Hey, I've read the Bible. That's not in there. That's not in the fucking Bible. It does not say anywhere in the Bible that all autistic people are going to fucking heaven. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that 144,000 of us are going to heaven. Where in the Bible does it actually say autism anywhere? It doesn't. It doesn't. So when you and your crazy friend, you don't like that, do you? That's the stuff that I got to deal with. People calling me crazy because I am screaming at the top of my lungs to be heard. Meanwhile, you're telling me about how the Illuminati had something to do with your birth. And I'm not supposed to see that as a red flag. You literally interrupting me over and over again to tell me I'm one of the 144,000 people who are going to heaven because the Bible says so. That's not supposed to set off red flags to me, right? The fact that you say you're going to make calls with me in the morning and all morning you ignore me. And then in the evening you only get a hold of me when it's, well, obviously going to be too late for them to even answer. Are they going to answer last minute? Probably not. And you promise me that you're gonna. You promise me that you're listening to me. Then, of course, you let me know, and I've got it all recorded. You tell me that you're going to mute it so that you don't talk over me, because you can't control your actions. You can't control your emotions. If I say something, you have to speak over me. You absolutely have to, and you cannot control yourself. Meanwhile, you do it repeatedly, and if I do it, then you treat me like shit and literally yell at me. So I yell on my YouTube channel instead of yelling at you. At first, I may speak up about the fact that it's agitating, how it's aggravating, how I'm wasting my time, how I'm wasting my resources, how I am hoping that you're telling the truth. I'm telling you what the process is to turn this in, and you're literally telling me you understand, and then you're going out of your way to do a whole bunch of other stuff. So you're telling me about all this other stuff that you're doing that I'm just supposed to believe. Well, you said that you record everything. Where's the recordings that show that you did that? Or am I expected to just take your word for it, especially after you've broken your promises repeatedly? After I've had to go to officers like Officer Amanda Jonas, who was one of the officers who committed crimes against me. And then when I tried to turn it in, she's the one who was assigned to investigate herself. Just like Scott DaCosta was assigned to investigate himself. Just like Officer Snyder in Tacoma, Washington was assigned to investigate himself. There's a lot of people who intended on helping to begin with, but they were bored and wanted to do other things. Even after being compensated monetarily to help me, they still did not. Like, of course, there's Stephanie Mejia, who used that money that was supposed to be used to come help me. Instead, she used it to cheat on her husband and go on a little mini vacation and treat the friend that she brought with her completely like shit. Completely alienate him and expect him to do all of the things that she said she was going to help me with, because she was busy flirting with Ventus, doing drugs with Ventus, getting drunk with Ventus, and fucking with Ventus. While her husband called me over and 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 over again. Why? Because he was worried about his wife and he was afraid she was cheating on him. Well, it turns out he was right. Obviously, I have no safe place, and eventually the cops are going to take my vehicle. I will not be able to afford to get it back out. You don't stop to consider the sheer excessive hemorrhage of money that being falsely accused of things that you didn't do really becomes, especially when your predators are allowed to physically assault you until you cannot function, until you are too afraid to even attempt to speak to a police officer alone, and they prey on this. They know that you're afraid of them. They know that they can threaten, harass, and intimidate you if there's nobody there who cares. When the only other people there are your 6 buddies with badges. You can do whatever you want to them, up to and including blowing my goddamn brains out if you want. Who's going to fucking care? You don't care if they lock me up on false charges. You don't care if I'm assaulted. What you care about is your opinions. Your opinions are what matters. The evidence don't mean shit. Listening to the victim don't mean shit. Now this lady, of course, who was claiming she was going to help me, and she couldn't help herself. She can't control her own behaviors and her emotions. Wants to interrupt me literally every conversation. Wants to use God, and then she also wants to say, oh, well, I'm a Pisces, or I'm a Taurus, so we're bullheaded. Okay. Well, that's a bunch of shit. But whatever. We are all capable of listening. You do not have to live up to a fucking stereotype. Just because you're a cheerleader doesn't mean you have to be a whore. Doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. Badge doesn't mean you have to be a Nazi. Stop trying to live up to fucking stereotypes. Now this lady who was going to help me and wanted to make promises, I hear this a lot. And then of course they all want to do the same thing. Literally the things that I'm telling them that I am being victimized over. I tell you that I am being victimized because lots of people made fake Sean Schwartz accounts. And you're going to make a fake Sean Schwartz. You're going to say, hey, Sean, I'll make myself another email account. That way you can send evidence and it doesn't get mixed in with the rest of my emails. And then you make a fake Sean Schwartz account. I tried to explain to you why that's not okay, and you fucking did it anyway. You say, I'm the only one trying to help. You're not trying to help. You are literally trying to make things worse because I've told you at that point the harm that it would be if you did that and you still chose to talk over me and do exactly what I said not to do. And then, of course, when I tell you about autism, you want to tell me you already know everything. You already know you've got a fucking cousin who's autistic. You know everything. And then the stuff that you start spouting at me that you know about autism is not autistic. Those are not autistic. That's not autism. Thinking that we are retarded, that's not autism. Thinking that we don't have emotions, that's not autism. Being God's 144,000, that is not autism. It also does absolutely nothing to help turn in my predators. It does nothing for you actually looking at the evidence that you've already been sent. When you want to call me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like Michelle, it's 3 o'clock in the fucking morning. Or you've procrastinated until 3 o'clock in the morning. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. With Michelle Stewart, 3 o'clock in the morning, she wanted to talk over me and tell me she was going to do a bunch of stuff that I was trying to explain to her. You can't do those things. That is a bad idea. Those things are still, to this day, used to hurt me that years ago. I am still blamed for it. You doing that exact thing, no, that'll make it worse. Do not do that exact thing. What did Michelle Stewart do? Well, she made a fake Sean Schwartz profile. No, Michelle, not okay. I am allowed to be pissed off at that. Then, of course, this new lady, I try to explain it to her. What does she do? She makes a fake Sean Schwartz profile.
Shannon Alvarado made a fake Sean Schwartz profile. A lot of people made fake Sean Schwartz profiles. Don't make fake Sean Schwartz profiles. If it's going to you, it's in your name. Your name. If you're the one that exposed the evidence about Kara Johnson Miles, and you sent me screenshots of it, those screenshots are fucking evidence. You saying, oh, they won't accept hearsay in court. It's not fucking hearsay, it's evidence. You say, oh, well, they can't admit stuff from Facebook as evidence. Allowed to go to court. Only the stuff that my predators wanted to show was allowed in court. Only my predators were allowed to go to court in most of those situations. Natalie had court without me because I didn't know I had a fucking court date. Nobody informed me that I had a court date, and none of the people who said they were going to look at any of it bothered to try. Repeatedly, officers who did not do their jobs before Natalie died, like Officer Burke, have been allowed to harm me after the fact. Repeatedly, across jurisdictional lines. After how badly Burke fucked up in Natalie Bollinger's case, he never should have had access to me in Boulder County. Natalie was killed in Adams County. My public pretender, Amanda Balehash, who wouldn't do her fucking job in Boulder County, is now a judge in Adams County, where Natalie Bollinger was killed. She assisted the officers in Natalie Bollinger's case who committed felonies against me with getting away from that, with getting away with those felonies, with depriving me of my property and my evidence, and never coming forward about it. I am still being harmed because my predators lied to the public, and none of the people who are supposed to protect me did so. None of the laws that are supposed to protect disabled people were ever followed at any point in time. And then I'm forced to go to literally officers that have committed crimes against me to turn them in to themselves. Meanwhile, Amanda Jonas, the officer in Boulder, Colorado, who was with Burke when they harmed me, her getting to be the officer who investigates herself in that, and then after I get out of fucking jail, I'm sent to her again. And the words that came out of the mouth of very important witnesses, Mandy Hughes, and her daughter Alyssa Rainwater, who was a 911 operator on the day that Natalie Bollinger was killed. I'm not gaslighting these people by telling the truth, and I'm not doxing them by telling the truth. I am showing the situations as Alyssa Rainwater saying that she worked for 911 on that night, and her opinions and the things that she heard the police officers saying, the things that she was involved in. She was literally involved the night that Natalie Bollinger got her brains blown out. She was on that 911 call, according to her, according to her mother. Also, according to them, Officer Amanda Jonas, the very officer I was trying to turn in for her crimes and Burke's crimes against me, including trying to claim that I was schizophrenic. Why wouldn't these officers try to retaliate against me? Why wouldn't they lie to Alyssa Rainwater and Mandy Hughes?
And of course, the things that Mandy Hughes had to say, she claimed that Amanda Jonas was going to investigate. She was going to investigate the situation with Ted Bollinger. But when I called up Amanda Jonas, she had a different story to tell altogether. She said that Alyssa Rainwater was a liar and that Mandy Hughes was a liar. So they tried to destroy that, and they tried to destroy the evidence that Alyssa Rainwater, in fact, did back up my story. And Mandy Hughes did, in fact, back up my story. Mandy Singer's testimony backs up my story. George Helmstedter's testimony backs up my story. Carl Rogers' words and testimony back up my story. My story is backed up by literally hundreds of witnesses who won't come forward because of slander. Each and every one of them knows that their little individual part of the story is true. But they didn't want to come forward because they were afraid people would judge them because they're sinners. Well, I told their sins. I told the things that they're afraid to come forward about. Hey, that shit's out in the open now, asshole. Everybody knows now. So now that everybody knows and nobody's ass raping you in prison, maybe, well, of course, I knew you weren't going to come forward if I exposed you. But it wasn't about exposing you to be an asshole and to show that you're a fucking sinner. It was about exposing the situations that I was repeatedly forced into and the pieces of shit who knew that what the cops said was a lie. The cops wrote down lies in every single one of my court dates. And the conversations with the witnesses show that those things that the cops said were lies, that the cops did knowingly, willingly, and intentionally lie, that they knew they were taking advantage of an at-risk adult. They knew that they were harming somebody who had been victimized to that point. The officers in Natalie's case got to see irrefutable evidence of threats, harassment, and intimidation against my life and the lives of others at the hands of Natalie Bollinger and her friends and family. They got to see that evidence with their own two eyes. And no, they didn't look at anywhere near all of it. Irrefutable evidence that Tim Beeson had repeatedly threatened, harassed, and intimidated me and my family over and over again before Natalie's death. There's also the evidence that I went to my friends and family for help stopping the abuse. But all the cops had to do was call me mentally ill, pretend to the hospital that I was schizophrenic, and claim that none of these people exist, they're figments of my imagination, they're fake profiles, whatever. Any excuse to justify the crimes that they committed, and you don't fucking care. Stupid pieces of shit. Then, of course, when you want to call me at fucking 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you want to talk then, well, there is stuff that you can do. You can listen to me tell my story. But when you repeatedly interrupt me, and literally 5 times in a row, like Michelle Stewart, 5 times within probably 30 seconds, she asked me literally the same question over and over again that I had literally just answered. And then she repeatedly wanted to force me to call a crisis line. I'm explaining to her what it's actually like calling a crisis line and what they help with, and that I have many things called to crisis lines that prove this. I need help turning it in. A crisis line at 3 a.m. is going to tell you they can't do anything at 3 a.m. If you're only going to call me at 3 a.m., you can become familiar with the situation instead of talking over me and then proving that you are literally not going to help me in the way that I am asking, in the way that I need, in the way that you said that you would. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to deflect. You're going to make it about you, or you're going to claim that you looked up a whole bunch of stuff that literally, I found those numbers in less than 30 seconds of fucking typing on my goddamn phone, and it takes you 2 weeks to find that number, and you've been researching hard. You haven't heard a word I have to say. You've done everything that I told you is harmful, and you have gone out of your way to knowingly, willingly, and intentionally do it. No, I'm not going to believe that you're just going to keep your word when you make promises and do not fulfill your promises, and I am harmed repeatedly while waiting on you to keep your promises. If you're gonna tell me about how good with numbers that I am and then talk to me like I'm fucking retarded, you're gonna tell me about how I'm one of the 144,000 going to heaven. What the fuck does any of this have to do with turning in the shit that I'm being abused over? When you try to shove the HUD housing at me, and I explain to you I've been through the HUD housing, that I can't get housing and why, but you want to push this over and over again, and then you want to talk down to me like I'm retarded. The HUD housing is the paperwork that I was busy filling out with Penny Cooper. Even though Penny Cooper told me that HUD was just going to deny me, and also the HART program was just going to deny me. They already knew, just the same as Megan Missigatis knew, that that was a dead fucking end. It was beating a dead fucking horse, because I was not allowed to defend myself in that situation, and I am not allowed into housing unless I have had a rental history of at least 2 years or more. Meanwhile, the cheapest place that I can find without housing assistance is at least $450. I literally cannot afford to fucking pay $450. That is over half of my money. And already over half of my money goes into my vehicle. And then I still have to pay for my phone bill. And you guys tell me about all this free phone shit. Help me do it. Help me do those things. I know this is a long video and none of you fuckers are gonna watch it to the end. But the thing is, I'm being harmed over people's fucking assumptions. God damn it. And there's evidence that shows that their fucking assumptions are wrong. But rather than look at the evidence, they just want to keep pushing that at me as if they play fucking retarded and keep on pushing that same bullshit that somehow, eventually, it might become true. No, you cannot change history, you stupid piece of shit. You can lie about what happened after the fact. That's all you can do. The evidence shows I told the truth and that you're a fucking piece of shit. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.